Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, March 9th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 177 days. The game against Michigan in 261 days. Practice number 2 of the spring for Ohio State is coming up a little later on today. But first, we're going to take a little look back at practice number 1 of the spring, and we're going to do it through the eyes of Ohio State head coach Ryan Day. We talked to Day after that first practice, got a little bit of insight about a whole lot of different things as the spring football season kicked off. The end of the first practice, that press conference is always a little bit weird because you want to ask him all sorts of questions about, okay, where does this thing stand? Where does that thing stand? And the answer is always kind of like, all right, like, hang on. It was just one practice. Nothing's been decided yet. Relax. So you're going to get a little bit of sort of a state of the team at the very beginning of the spring here, straight from Ryan Day. Let's start with something we saw when we first walked in. Period 1 of the first practice for the spring. Ohio State's got the punt unit out there, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is back there returning punts. That's not something you necessarily expected to see. So what was the thinking there?
Yeah, well, with Emeka not going this spring, we're just going to put a bunch of guys back. It's hard when we're inside. So looking at the weather, I'm hoping to get outside some, and that'll give us a better feel for it. But always looking to build depth there at returner. And he's been doing it now kind of in practice a little bit here and there. And he's got really good depth perception, and so if we need him back there, we'll use him. And so not having a few guys at spring practice allows us the opportunity to try new guys, to build depth down the road, and that's always healthy. But I thought just seeing him back there today did a nice job.
Spring is always kind of a little bit of a weird time with the team because you've got guys who would probably be playing if it was a real game in the fall, who are not going to be practicing this spring. You got a lot of kind of cleanup surgeries and guys just sort of rehabbing injuries and that kind of stuff. So you're always a little bit thin. The rest of your freshman class isn't there yet. So where is Ryan Day feeling pretty good about the depth right now? And where does he maybe have some concerns going into the season?
I think when you look at our depth, I guess we'll start on offense, running back, receiver. We've got, pretty strong there at tight end. We're building that depth. Feel pretty good about that. This is the first time we've had 3 quarterbacks, and we'll have a 4th one coming in the summer. I can't remember. It's been a while since we've had that many quarterbacks in, on scholarship. So that's good. Offensive line is certainly some guys we've got to replace and build that. So that's an area where we got to focus on. On defense, up front, I feel good about the first group and a half, and I think we got to keep building the 2s and 3s. But we have some good young players there. Linebacker, again, same thing. I feel good about the first 3 or 4 guys, and then we got to keep building the depth there. Safety is something we brought. Jihad in, and we brought Davidson in at corner, so that helped with the depth. But I think we'll get a better feel for where everybody's at going into this year, probably by the time we get back from spring break and I get to put that first weekend, the first scrimmage on Saturday, we'll have a better idea there. But we're always trying to build depth because we know we're going to need it. We talk about this type of thing this time of year, and then we get in the preseason of, how are you going to get all these guys playing time? Yet eventually they all get into the game, So some areas, as they have experience, game experience. Others, we're trying to get that in practice.
We are heading into year 2 of the Sonny Styles era at Ohio State. Styles enrolled early last year. He should have still been a high school senior. Instead, he was playing at Ohio State. Got some really meaningful minutes in that Peach Bowl game against Georgia. And now, here he is, heading into his second year. There's some open spots in the secondary. So is Sonny Styles more or less a lock to be a starter this fall?
I mean, you've seen what he can do in his first year. So, yeah, I mean, that he's, we're always trying to find the first 11 guys, and then we kind of build it from there. And, he's in the role that he played last year, stepping in after reclassifying and coming here in the summer. I couldn't have been more impressed with what he did. I think he's got a really, really bright future ahead of him. I think he can do a lot of things for us. So as we start to get into the spring, we're going to dive into some of the things that he can do for us. But he is a playmaker, and he's going to play a lot of football.
Elsewhere in the secondary, the Buckeyes brought in a transfer from Ole Miss, Davison Igbinosun. He is a New Jersey native, but played a bunch last year as a starter for Ole Miss before transferring to the Buckeyes this year. Now, he's not necessarily a lock to start, but it sure sounds like he is a contender to maybe earn a starting role or at least a rotational role there with the Buckeyes this year.
he wants to compete. So he's gonna, and he'll have a great opportunity. And first day in the books today, so it's good. When you go through 8 weeks of a off-season program, it allows guys to build discipline and camaraderie and strength and a lot of things. But now it's time to go on the field, and without a great 8 weeks of off-season, it's hard to have a good spring. But so many guys did. He came in, stepped in, and did a nice job establishing himself, early on. And that's something that, coming in from another program is not always easy to do. So he's done a good job of that. But it's going to be a good competition. I've been impressed with the off season that some of these guys have had. I thought, Denzel's really, had a really good 8 weeks and had a really good first day today. So I think that's been great. Seeing Jordan out there, Davidson will be out there. I mean, we got some good, good guys back there, and I think they're all growing up. And so, as we know, that was an area that we got to make sure that we really take a big step in. And so it was a good first day today. We'll take a look at the film.
At the NFL Combine last weekend, CJ Stroud talked about how, looking back, he probably could have used his athleticism and his legs a little bit more at Ohio State. Cue every Ohio State message board poster and Twitter user saying, "Yaha." So what does Ryan Day's ideal quarterback look like? Would they run a little more than CJ Stroud did last year? And where do things stand now with the two quarterbacks battling to replace Stroud as Ohio State's quarterback?
Yeah, just day one in the books. But I think when you're looking at the ideal thing, there isn't really an ideal. I think anytime a defense has to account for the quarterback, then you've got what you want done. In the run game, certainly. In the pass game, when you can create, extend, those type of things, it really, it's really the X factor. I think on offense is when the quarterback can do that. So. You got to get a feel for what that is. How long do you stay in the pocket? When do you escape? When do you launch yourself for that first down? When do you protect yourself? Because it's a long season. There's a lot of factors and variables that come into it. And each quarterback's a little bit different. So, you think about, since I've been here, you had JT. That was a certain one. Then you had Dwayne. He kind of found his way, in that Maryland game. Then you had Justin. I think it was the first game he had he pulled one for a long touchdown run and then kind of went on from there. And then CJ and now we'll have a new chapter here. So each quarterback has a different style. But ultimately that's what you're trying to get done. You're trying to equate numbers in a run game and then have the ability to extend when applicable in the pass game.
We talked earlier a little bit about the depth on the team on the whole. Just this spring, there is just not a lot of depth on the defensive side of the ball. They're not quite a full three deep, but pretty darn close to a full three deep right now, especially if you include walk-ons. But, is that a concern this spring? That you're maybe if just a few injuries away from not having a whole heck of a lot of guys on that side of the ball?
It's going to be good in preseason to get some of those guys who are coming in the summer here. But when you look at, our numbers right now, we were able to run threes. If we get some guys nicked up, we'll have to adjust, and that's something that's happened in the past. But right now, our numbers are pretty good, so looking to have a healthy spring and hopefully continue to play with three groups.
Speaking of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, Mitchell Melton suffered a bad knee injury last year during the spring game and missed the entire 2022 season. Now this spring, you're hearing a lot about Mitchell Melton again, just as you did last spring. We even got to see him a little bit on the first practice on Tuesday. Not a ton, but a little bit. So what's the latest on Mitchell Melton and his recovery?
Yeah, he's been cleared for individual drills, but we're going to kind of hold him to that for, I think, the majority of the spring, if not all the spring. We'll kind of see how that goes. But, we're hoping he can make an impact for us this year. He had a really, before the injury, we were excited about him, what he was doing. So he's got really good pass rush ability and really good strength and play speed. So we just got to be smart and make sure we're bringing him back the right way.
One of the very big stories this year during spring ball and probably the summer and the lead up to the season is going to be the offensive line. Day one of spring practice, the Buckeyes lined up with Josh Fryer at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Zen Michalski at right tackle, Matt Jones at right guard, and Carson Hinsman at center. So, with looking at that offensive line, and especially, I guess, looking at the tackle positions, Josh Fryer, Zen Michalski, maybe Tigger Chibola at right tackle. How comfortable is Ryan Day with that offensive line right now?
Well, Josh, we moved Josh to left. We felt like he had enough experience. He felt comfortable making that move. We'll see how that goes as we start to put the pads on. It's hard with no pads, just point of contact. But watching him move his feet, that was really good. We see Zen and Tegra, at the other side, and so watch the film, kind of see where they're at. Carson's at center there, Vic's at center. So first day, it's kind of hard to tell, but I don't think anybody looked out of place. And they're going against a good front, JT and Jack and Tyleek and Ty. We're gonna get a great evaluation as we head through 15 practices.
Ohio State's running back room is plenty deep, even without Evan Pryor and Travian Henderson playing this spring. You still have Chip Trayanum, you still have Mayan Williams, and you still have Dallin Hayden. Hayden has bulked up a little bit heading into his second season. That's generally how it works. You get the first year with Coach Mick, and then you sort of start really bulking up that second year. Now that's sort of where Dallin Hayden is. But that is still a packed room. So where does Dallin Hayden stand in trying to earn a lot of carries this fall?
Anytime you come in that first year and you get thrown to the fire like he did, there's a lot going on for you. I thought he handled himself really well, and when we needed him, he stepped in and played. Anytime you're into year two, like you said, physically, you get stronger. Emotionally, you understand it better. Mentally, you understand the scheme better. So it just starts to slow down, and you're able to play faster. And so into year two with game experience under his belt. So hopefully all those things add up to more playing time, more production.
There were a couple times last fall where Brian Hartline got a little bit defensive when he was asked about what were then the freshman wide receivers, the class of 2022 receivers, were just not quite as productive as some of the previous classes. And Hartline was always kind of quick to say, everyone kind of develops at their own pace, and some of that has to do with who's ahead of them on the depth chart and all of that. But now those first-year receivers are second-year receivers, and they have a big opportunity this spring with Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming out, and Marvin Harrison probably not doing a whole lot this spring. Probably going to be a little bit restricted because you don't need to do that much with him, right? So what kind of opportunity is there for those second-year receivers this spring?
Yeah, the truth is they're going to get really pushed by this freshman group. The three guys that came in have made it already an impact. We've been very impressed with them, and then Brandon coming in the summer. So, this is going to be a really good opportunity with Emeka out, Julian out. We're going to be smart with X and with Marvin. Those guys have played a lot of football. So, like you said, what an unbelievable opportunity for all those guys to step in and play. And so this is a very, very big spring for them.
Every spring it feels like there is a true freshman who comes in and is a little bit of a wow physically, just a little bit bigger or a little bit stronger, a little bit taller, whatever, than you might expect, especially if a true freshman. This year, that award might go to Jelani Thurman, the tight end out of Georgia. It is early. It was only practice one, but he certainly looks the part of someone who might be able to play some kind of a role this fall.
Yeah, I'm, again, it's hard to tell early on, but he has all the tools. Tight end is a developmental position. There's a lot that goes on with tight end. You're talking about you got protection, you got blocking, you got route running. There's a lot going on in day one for a tight end. But all the tools are there. His mentality and competitiveness we've seen in the last 8 weeks. So, this is a guy who just needs a ton of reps. And the more reps he gets, the better he's going to be. But all the tools are there.
Another one of the new faces at Ohio State is Davis Nigbinosin. Talked about him a little bit earlier. He's another one who was pretty physically impressive on the Buckeye Weekly podcast that aired on Tuesday. You might have heard Tony Gerdeman tell the story. Davis Nigbinosin is wearing number 20 on defense. Well, Sonny Styles is also wearing number 20 on defense. And when Tony walked into the practice and saw number 20 working with the corners, he thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why Sonny Styles is working with the corners. Now, Sonny Styles is 6'4". Sonny Styles is a big dude. And Davis Nigbinosin next to those corners, well, he looks like a pretty big dude as well. He is 6'2". And he is he's big for a corner. So that can come with advantages. That can come with some disadvantages. So what is the good and the bad of having a corner the size of Davis Nigbinosin?
Physicality you see for sure. You can see even today, I saw a couple have to watch the film where he got his hands on guys. And, that length, like you said, once you get your hands on, when you have that type of length, it makes, it hard for the receiver. Also, being a zone corner and having that type of length and size allows you to cover more ground and get your hands on more balls. So, and for him, he's got experience to play in the SEC as a freshman. So, I think that helps with his confidence.
It was obviously just practice number 1 of the spring, so no, there was not a decision on the quarterback battle between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. What kind of fun would that be? It's got to get strung out a little bit so we can get a few more shows of talking about the quarterback battle, right? So if the decision hasn't been made yet, what would Ryan Day at least have to see from one of those guys to really feel confident in his decision that he has finally identified his quarterback whenever that happens?
I think the first thing is leadership. You have to be felt and heard. And I did that today. That was a really encouraging thing. I heard, even maybe after a good play or a bad play, it didn't matter. Good leadership out there, because at the end of the day, it's our job to as quarterbacks to lead the team and to drive teams down, or drive the team down the field and score touchdowns. And being that leader is critically important. I feel like we're going to have a great supporting cast. So, the quarterback doesn't need to be superhuman. He just needs to do his job, make routine plays routinely, and then it'll build from there. But the number one thing we're looking for is leadership and toughness.
Travian Henderson had kind of an up and down sophomore season at Ohio State, and you have seen that from Ohio State running backs in the past. Henderson, a lot of those issues had to do with injuries, and he ended up having surgery in December. He was on kind of a weird crutch kind of thing during the Peach Bowl. But then out there, first practice of the spring, there was Travian Henderson running around with his teammates. He wasn't full go, but he was out there and he was running around. So where do things stand with him entering the spring?
We've had to keep him out of things. There's been a time where he jumped in Matt drills with the boot on. He's dying to get out there. He's very competitive. So, yeah, Mick had to grab him and take him out a couple times, I think. But he's itching to get out there. And he's not ready to go right now. We'll continue to evaluate as we go, but I think his rehab's gone well and his attitude's been unbelievable. I think the guys appreciate his positiveness, because when you get injured and you get down, it can wear on you a little bit. But you haven't seen that with him. He's been a positive influence to his teammates and to his unit. So he's had a really good offseason, especially with his rehab. So we're anxious to get him back on the field soon. I just don't know if it'll be this spring yet.
And finally, we got to talk about a guy who is not here for the spring, and that is Lincoln Kienholz. The Ohio State quarterback battle is going on, and Lincoln Kienholz is still back in high school, back in South Dakota. So how do you keep a guy like that up to speed when he's not in Columbus at all for spring ball?
Yeah, Lincoln is finishing up. I think he's making a run to the state basketball championship. So we're just, making sure he can focus on that. That's important to him. But at the same time, we're also getting him some of the offense. And then once the basketball's over, he'll come in and spend a few days with us watching practice. So I think that'll be good. But with Brandon, he's been getting with Coach Hart and kind of learning the offense. And so we have a plan. Calvin, same thing with Coach Walt. We have a really good plan in place. Guys have to send us some videos of their workouts. We have Zooms and different things. We're learning the offense, defense, and special teams, so that when they get here, they're not far behind. And if you think about between Donovan Jackson, JTT, Sonny, we've had a few guys who've come in the summer and actually made an impact in the fall. And I think it's because of that plan that we have for those guys who aren't here in the spring. Ideally, we like them here in the spring, but it doesn't work out for everybody. And so that's kind of how we get them ready, once they get here in the summer.
We will be back at the Woody Hayes on Thursday morning, bright and early, covering practice once again for you. We should have a photo gallery and video and some practice reports, and we'll have interviews as well. Lots of great content all coming up for you, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com, at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and on your various podcasts that you know and love. Buckeye Weekly, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, probably a Big Me kickoff show coming at some point. There's going to be a lot of coverage coming up. This will be the second practice of the spring, and then the Buckeyes head out for spring break. This is how it always works every year. I think people always forget that. But we get a couple practices, then they head out for spring break for a week, and then they come back, and spring practice really kind of gets going for real. So that's what you have to look forward to the next couple days. But it is also a big visit weekend for Ohio State. They bring in some folks in to visit on the recruiting front. So we'll probably have a show coming up on that in the next couple days. Should be a lot of fun stuff to talk about, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So you should sign up today so you don't miss out on anything during one of the more eventful times of year for the Ohio State football team. So that will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.